Good afternoon. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
I don't have a bouncing elephant or a naked Barbie, but we are going to talk about some, hopefully some very interesting issues that I'd like to discuss with you. And the central question for this part of the day is, can we end violence? Is it possible to end violence if we look at it in an entirely new way? Can we put violence in the past the way that we've put smallpox, leprosy, yellow fever, typhus, plague, things that no one thought at the time could be put into the past? Can we put them into the past just by understanding them the way they might need to be understood? This is the spectrum of violent illness. So do we understand violence as principally a matter of guns and criminals and gangbangers and bad people and evil and gangs that require punishment and police and prisons? Or can we understand it? This is supposed to be me, a doctor with Band-Aid eyes, spitting out a gun, I suppose. This is the magazine that I think brought us to the attention of PopTech, which brings up the contrast. Can we understand it as a health matter, as purely a health matter, as a behavioral issue, as an epidemic type of an issue, something that requires just behavior change, and in fact maybe even something that is principally an infectious matter? This is the city in which I work and most of the ceasefire activities of our central organization work. The red bodies represent deaths in 1 year, and the black shootings that were non-fatal. This is an abundance of violence resulting in absolute scarcity of development. Violence is development in reverse. This is the situation, as Malcolm Gladwell mentioned yesterday, of where children aren't going to school because they can't cross gang lines. They're not going to school because they're afraid. Even if they go to school, they have a chronic stress disorder from fear. Teachers don't want to work there. School dropouts are largely driven by fear. Businesses don't want to go there. And basically you have a stranded fear situation. And this is a close-up of some of the epicenters that exist within this epicenter of Chicago, among many other cities, requiring billions of dollars of loss. Now, what did the old plagues look like? This is plague. What did they look like? And just think about what we're dealing with today. Death's common everywhere. Death's a daily occurrence. People afraid. People not wanting to go into these neighborhoods. People who are infected themselves being blamed for it. People being burned at the stake. Individuals taken away to the castle or the dungeon. And in some instances, widows dragged around the moat. Why were widows dragged around the moat in this kind of a situation? Is it because the people were stupid? Or did they think they were doing the right thing and they just didn't understand what was really going on? How did these plagues move into the past? Most people think they moved into the past as a result of general progress. It's not the case. They moved into the past when they got figured out. Why couldn't they be figured out before? It's because it was invisible. The word is invisible. Plague is a bacteria inside a flea, inside a rat. Who knew? Nobody knew. What about these epidemics in general? Well, here's an epidemic of cholera that I was involved with, showing a rapid uptick of cases and deaths. And then look at the second peak, where a second susceptible population, this is a new number of refugees coming in, and they became infected. So a rapid peak followed by the infection hitting a new group of susceptibles. Look at this curve. This is killings. The last one was cholera. This is killings in Rwanda. And again, a second curve, a new group of susceptibles following the first wave. In this case, it was people who were hiding, who then got caught up in the infectious mayhem. Here's a bunch of curves of violence epidemics. The first set were what we call point source epidemics, a point source of cholera, and then the initiation of the Rwanda deaths following the helicopter crash of the two presidents. But these are more person-to-person transmissions, killings in various situations. And they look like tuberculosis curves, one event leading to another, over time, over months, years, or even decades. Violence appears to the epidemiologist in every single way exactly like an infectious disease. In its curves, in its time courses, in its transmission characteristics, in its incubation periods, in its latencies, in its dormancy, in the susceptibility of certain populations, in the ability to activate infection to disease. You activate someone who's infected with TB to get active disease, someone who's infected with the thought of violence into actually doing violence. And it's likewise exactly the same in its history, its misunderstanding, and in its mistreatments. But most importantly, it seems to be susceptible to the disease control strategies that we use to treat infectious diseases. How are epidemics reversed? Wouldn't you like to know? As it turns out, there's only two things that we do when we reverse an epidemic. We interrupt transmission, preventing one event from leading to another, leading to another, leading to another. Does that make sense? As for measles, and you can see how violence, gang wars, whatever, how they lead to each other. You have to interrupt transmission, and you need to change the central behavior that's driving it. Whether it's sexual behavior, or violence behavior, or eating behavior, or cigarette behavior, whatever it is, you need to change that norm. And those are the only two things that we do when we reverse epidemics. So we interrupt transmission, and different technologies are used depending on which infectious disease. For example, for measles, we immunize, and that prevents this from going from this person to this person. For TB, we find the most infectious persons by looking at their sputum, and we render them non-infectious through chemotherapy. And for violence, we use what we call violence interrupters, who can detect people who are about to do it or who have it on their mind and can change their thinking. I'll tell you more about them later. The other thing we do is norms, changing social norms. I realize that this picture looks a lot like us in the audience today, right? But I've come off of the social norm. I've actually put on a suit today. But if I were wearing a bathing suit, I'd be way out of norm. So what is a norm? What is a norm? A norm is what everybody else is doing. And what is everybody else doing? Everybody else is doing what everybody else is doing. What is he doing? He's doing what he's doing. What is he doing? He's doing what he's doing. He's doing what he's doing. That's what, how did this come? How are norms formed? They're formed by what's called learning. But actually, it's not intentional learning, is it? It's copying and modeling. It's virtually osmosis. You do what you see other people doing. And then it just gets stuck by the social expectations of everybody else. And the first time I really picked up on this is when I was doing AIDS work, and I was taught that the principal indicator or predictor of whether someone uses a condom is whether they think their friends use a condom. What a way to make a life decision. But this is happening all the time. And in the realm of violence, what we have to break through is to realize that violent behavior in certain neighborhoods and certain conditions in social networks is normal. So if you grow up and your brother is doing violence and other people are shooting a gun and you've seen people shot and there's fighting in the house and there's shooting and brother is in prison and father has been killed, you don't suddenly wake up and say, wait a second, what's going on here? It's normal. Any more than you would if you grew up in this country suddenly say, wait a second, why am I using a knife and a fork? It's just normal. And it gets driven unconsciously, invisibly, by what other people are thinking. And the thoughts are, I need to do it, it's expected of me. In fact, even fear that if I don't do it, that I will be socially ostracized. And so, for example, why is no one in this room smoking? Is law enforcement here? I don't see them. Because if one of you were to light up, everyone would look at you and say, what do you mean? Don't you know we don't do this anymore? So what is the point of this? When I was in medical school, in a room not quite this big, we would be watching angiograms of people with heart attacks, and a third of us were smoking. But now, in this room, we're not smoking. So what does that mean? It means norms can be changed, and they're changed all the time. We know how in health to change norms. It's multiple messengers, same message, get the most credible messengers, you get it to the highest level of intensity, and you change norms. And you can do it for cigarette behavior, sexual behavior, eating behavior, exercise behavior, seatbelt behavior, breastfeeding behavior. How about even the behavior of how many children you have, which has been shifted in family planning programs. So we know how to do this. So this is all there is basically to reversal of an epidemic. Now, what is the etiologic agent? I've alluded to it, actually. What's the invisible agent? Well, let me tell you this first. You don't even have to know. You don't even always have to know. Because, for example, in AIDS, in several cities in the US and Europe and even in Africa, people were starting to change their behavior with respect to AIDS a few years before anybody had the virus, just because we had an inkling of how transmission was occurring. And similarly for SARS, some of you may remember this, we had the understanding that this was most likely due to direct contact and respiratory transmission. And before we found the coronavirus, already effective interventions were taking place. So you don't even have to know. However, I think we know. There's plague, there's AIDS, there's mad cow, there's the thought. Is it progressively invisible? That's about as invisible as it gets, because you don't know the thought of the person next to you. It's so invisible. But it took us until the 1600s to first see this under a microscope, and still no one had the faintest idea it had anything to do with a disease. Anything. It took another 250 years till someone connected it with a disease. These are specific. These are concrete. These are pieces of information that direct your mind and your body. And they're acquired. Well, what does this look like in practice? Wait a second. There's something going on in the community right here, right now. John, what's going on? John, what's going on?
Hey, T.O., what's up, man? What's happening? I just left off the block over there with Alfonso, man. He told me that you drove down on him with a group of your guys, man, and threatened him about a $100 debt that he owe you. I'm going to tell you what I told him. I said, Alfonso, I'm finna go over here, I'm finna talk to T.O., and I'm going to try to calm him down. He gave me the $100 to get to you. And he said he used to look up to you as a father figure and a role model. But now that since you drove down there on him like you did, he got a whole outlook, different outlook on you now. I'm going to tell you what I told him to change his mind. I told him, I said, Alfonso, You know, if you go over there with all these guys over there on that block and you kill T.O., all them guys with you, Big Bob, Big John, and Gorilla, they're going to be the first ones to take the witness stand on you when you go to court. And you're going to be in a cell for the rest of your life, from 60 to life, doing 23 hours a day locked in a cage like a dog, and they're going to give you 1 hour to be out. You ain't never been there yet, T.O., and that's a good thing. But I've been there and done that. And it ain't no piece of cake. Hold up. My phone ringing. That might be Alfonso. Hello? Yeah, it's China Joe. Uh-huh. Yeah, I'm talking to T.O. right now. Oh, all right then. I love you too. Man, that's your grandmama, man. She said that she seen you hooping and hollering and running out the door with a gun in your hand, talking about you finna go and kill somebody if they don't have your money by the end of the day. If you think that $100 is worth the rest of your life being caged up in the cell, then you go right on ahead over there and do the unthinkable to Alfonso. But I'm going to let you know right now, you're going to regret it for the rest of your life. What you need to do is get on that phone and call that brother Alfonso and tell that brother that you got that money. Because he told me when I give you that money for you to call him. So go home, man, and check on your grandmama because she says she's sick and she ain't feeling good. And you the only one that she got left in her life, man. Go home to grandma, man, and check on your grandmama because she's worried about you. And I'm going to call Alfonso and tell Alfonso, man, that you putting that behind you, man. You finna move on. Hello? Can I speak to Alfonso? Hey, what's up, man? Yeah, I just got you talking to T.O., man. I told him exactly what you said, man. When I told him that you used to be a role model and a father figure to you, his whole face dropped. If he don't call you before the day is out, then you be a bigger man than him and you call him. And if he don't call you, then you give me a call and I'll go back and check on him again. All right, then. I love you too, man. All right, make sure you call me before you do anything, man. If things ain't going right, call me up so I can go right back over there and talk to him until we can get this straightened out, all right? All right, then. I love you too. Peace out.
So we have real people getting really killed in Chicago and in all the cities. And I realize this is, in a way, entertainment and interesting, but these situations, when Joe isn't there, or Fonz isn't there, Carl isn't there, these guys aren't there, someone gets killed. These guys are there, it gets cooled down. These guys have, the interrupters, of which there's about 35, have interrupted about 1,400 events with a gun that we have documentation. It's not just anybody who's selected and recruited and trained who does this. These guys are professional workers, like immunization workers or AIDS education outreach workers. These guys are professional epidemiologic disease control workers. There's another cadre of worker. Whenever you do disease control, you design and invent new categories of worker called outreach workers. Outreach workers, which we also had in the AIDS epidemic and which I also used in TB work. We've also used in all kinds of refugee work. Outreach workers also hired from the same population, interrupt conflicts, but they also carry what we call clients or participants who are, in a way, the most infectious people and spend long-term time with them transforming their thinking. From this is the kind of life to this is the kind of life. And these people are working with the highest risk guys, the guys who are carrying the guns, the guys who have spent time, the guys who have done violent offenses. That's the focus of their work. And additionally, we obviously won't have time to go through this, but there is processes, systems, structures for doing the norm change, which involve multiple messengers, in particular, the most credible messengers you can find. The most credible messengers are the ones who have access and who can shift the minds. We got a call from a mom whose son is downstairs loading up weapons with his friends to go out and do something. Mom is never going to call the police on her son. Same thing with the friends, all the other friends. Our job is to prevent these things from happening, and we need the most credible people, very, very highly selected, for their Rolodex, for their being on this side of the line now, and for their absolute hunger to help transform others. And it's their job, along with these other pieces that I'll show you quickly, which transforms a norm. Here is what we call a response, a community response. Every single shooting in a ceasefire zone, the community is mobilized to come out in dozens or hundreds, saying this is a big deal. Previously, no one said a thing, and the idea, the thought was nobody cares and no one's doing anything. This will never change. These people come out and they say that we don't want this here anymore. And frequently, a lot of the guys who are involved are hanging around on the outskirts, and gives us a chance to talk with them more. We got the clergy involved with specific roles, specific training, just a number of the multiple messengers. And then, just like any behavior change work, you have to actually roll it into a campaign. It's like breastfeed, you know, immunize your children, drink Coke, and just right there. And when we come out with these in a neighborhood, people say thank you. Everybody, including those who are doing it. They say, don't tell me about this, don't tell me about the drugs, but we all agree on that. In that way, this is an easier issue than sexual behavior. Results with this method. Well, this is the scattering of areas where the conflicts have been mediated. Here's a first-year result compared to Chicago as a whole. This now has undergone 4 universities studying it outside of our own work. This data shows 3 different sets of comparisons with an average of just under a 45% drop in shootings and killings. This isn't about bullying. This isn't about fights. This is lethal events. These are shootings and killings. This is the reduction in Chicago's rate as compared to other cities since the ceasefire intervention was started. This is what we call hotspot analysis, density of shootings, before and after, a South Side neighborhood, Auburn Gresham. A very famous South Side neighborhood, Englewood. Far north side, cooling down. Statistically, significantly larger changes than controls. There's been a U.S. Department of Justice study, 3-year study, 4 universities, has now stamped this as evidence-based practice. Not something the U.S. Department of Justice is used to looking at, which are other types of matters. And so it's been demonstrated now to reduce shootings and killings, to prevent retaliation murders. 5 of 8 neighborhoods, it was 100% on reducing retaliation murders, which are the greatest predictor of a repeat of a murder, making hotspots cooler and neighborhoods safer. This has now been repeated 16 times. We're working now besides Chicago, with startup programs in Newark and Baltimore. We're in a planning mode with New York and Oakland, a few other places, and a couple other countries that I won't have time to talk about. So the intervention is proven now, and it's at a very, very low level of implementation. It's kind of where oral rehydration therapy was when it just came out of the smallpox lab, the cholera labs. So I just leave you with the question, what if we were able to blow this out, work with it to scale in the cities, in other situations? Is it possible, using this method and perhaps with other accompanying things, to get violence into the past as a piece of history, with the reminder that most of the other epidemics, which were with man forever, were never imagined to be able to go into the past? Can we leave violence in the situation where there's something really small sitting in a CDC lab on its own? Thank you very much.